Hi, my name is Tony McLaughlin from Citibank, and I'm talking to Nelson Chow from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome, and morning actually to you, Tony.
Hey, Nelson, Hong Kong has been making great strides in not only digitizing payments, but also creating an environment for the healthy growth of fintechs. Could you tell us a little bit about the transformations that are taking place?
Yeah, sure. I think we have been doing a lot of payment related stuff in the past as a central bank. The traditional infrastructure such as the RTGS, we have been running it for 20 odd years. In fact, when I look at the record, we are the fourth jurisdiction to have introduced RTGS after the US, the UK, and Switzerland.
Oh, great.
And since then, when I look at the record, it's actually quite interesting, and we find that it's very resilient. So far, since introduction, the uptime is 100%. So
Yes.
it's a very robust technology, but that is a very traditional way of doing payment. It's also
Yeah.
the large value payment.
Mhm.
But I think a couple of years ago we met. I think 2016.
Yes.
Prior to just before we introduced faster payment system.
Mm.
That is the kind of the newer infrastructure that we believe. In the old days, we do a lot of this very core financial infrastructure for banks and for large value, as I mentioned.
Yes.
But I think the world has changed a lot. The
Mm.
consumers are expecting more real-time payment,
Yes.
even though those payments are in very tiny, ticket size.
Mm.
They also expect the cost of doing those payments are very low or even a zero cost. So
Yes.
that's why we, embarked the journey to construct this brand new infrastructure to cater for the increasing expectation of the consumer. And
Yeah.
now we have, since we met and then we introduced the faster payment system back in 2018, we have very encouraging development. And I think you also can see it from our public website. We publish
Absolutely.
the monthly transaction data and registration, on a monthly basis, and of course, COVID-19 has helped a little bit in terms
Mhm.
of the growth and the adoption of this new infrastructure.
Mm.
So just give you a kind of some context. For example,
Yes.
in July, the average daily transactions is 400,000.
Mhm.
That is actually four times the number year on year. So
Wow.
previous year, 2019 is 100,000. Now it's 400,000. Of course,
Amazing.
the traditional core infrastructure LTGS, we still see steady growth on a daily basis. The transaction level is 1 trillion Hong Kong dollar. But
Yes.
interestingly, we do not have only just one RTGS in Hong Kong. We have four.
Mhm.
We also cover US dollar, euro, and also RMB.
Yeah.
On RMB, the transaction is also about, on average, daily transaction amount is about another 1 trillion. So if you
Mm.
look at both the core and the new infrastructure, we see still very healthy growth of in terms of the usage.
Yeah. So a very successful implementation of the FPS system. And I think you've also gone on to create a standard around QR codes to, I guess, make it easier for merchants to integrate with wallets and with other types of payments.
Yeah. Since the introduction of faster payment in the system in 2018, we actually, before we launch it, we talked to a lot of experts in this industry, and you are one of them. We also talked to central banks, Bank of England, and others, to kind of understand the pain points, the problems that they
Yes.
encountered when they introduced the system. So we learn a lot before we launch it. And one of them is actually this common QR code. We don't want the merchants to stick out, 10, 15 QR codes at the table for the consumers to pay. So we unify that into one single QR code. So no matter what e-wallet service providers you use, you just scan the same QR code at the merchant. But of course, when I talk about the surge in transactions of faster payment system, we are still working very hard on the merchant side. The peer-to-peer that comprise most of the transactions that I mentioned, but we are working hard on bill payment, government payment, and also merchant payment. So next year will be an exciting new year for us because we are working hard on a lot of the promotion and to encourage further usage of the faster payment system.
Absolutely. And I also understand that in Hong Kong, it's not an initiative by HKMA exactly itself, but Hong Kong is also looking at the implementation of digital identity.
Yes, the government is actually working on a new infrastructure. It's called I'm Smart. So it's a digital identity for the users to kind of help also the financial institutions, because when you look at the current situation, you need to create an account totally online. It has to use a pretty old technologies, like, for example, using your camera to scan your Hong Kong ID or your passport, that kind of thing. But in the new world, you have this digital identity that you can just open a bank account, or even sign a transaction. So replacing all the old style web signature type of process.
And that should also be a great enabler, I guess, of open banking. So is this also one of the trends that you're looking at, emulating the kind of success in the UK, for example, in terms of enabling people to share data and also maybe to initiate payments through open banking?
We have. We don't call ourselves we don't use the term open banking, but it's similar thing. We have introduced an open API back in also 2018. So it's a 4-phase approach. First 2 phases we are already implemented in 2019. But the important part is when we look at the other jurisdictions' experience, we also want to ensure if you want to do account aggregation, we don't want the users to have to not in multiple times. If there is a single sign-on mechanism like the digital ID that we're discussing, that will facilitate a much better adoption. So that is the space that we are exploring.
Now, also, I've seen recently, some reports in terms of your work into central bank digital currencies, and I think one of the interesting conclusions was that in a market that has a very well developed, retail payment systems, the case for retail central bank digital currencies may be difficult to make. But where's your current thinking in terms of tokenization of money, tokenization of securities, and the usage of DLT?
I think for similar to the UK, we have quite a number of e-wallet service provider or retail payment methods. So back in 2017, when we first started to study CBDC, so a more blockchain-based digital currency, we have already kind of concluded at that time that for a place like Hong Kong, we don't see much kind of usage, or I mean, we do not see a lot of prospect for launching this additional retail-based digital currency because, for your information, we already have 18 store value facility providers here, a huge competition, and among them, 6 of them are e-wallet service providers. So yeah, you already have so much, and in terms of the digital payment statistics, when we look at the consumer spending, almost 82% are conducted in digital means. So how much more can you achieve by launching yet another retail payment facility, and at the same time, without competing with this private sector innovators? I think so. That's why on the retail space, we don't see a lot of attraction. But of course, we keep an eye on all the developments elsewhere. This year you're starting to see a lot more discussion, especially after COVID, about how this retail-based CBDC could help. So we are also looking very carefully to see whether we need to kind of change a little bit of our attention. But of course, on the wholesale space, that's the area that we think there are more opportunities. On one thing, it's the cross-border wholesale payment, right? And there are lots of pain points. The not transparent, the cost issue, and also the time to conduct a remittance. All those are long issues for decades. So that's why we work with other jurisdictions such as the Bank of Thailand on the project Inflon Lion Rock, and hopefully we have published the first paper earlier this year, so audience can find it on our public website.
Exactly. Yeah, it's on your website. And as you said, there's a very thriving ecosystem in Hong Kong. It's really a hotbed of innovation and fintech innovation. And that's something, Nelson, that you've really sought to foster and encourage. So could you tell us a little bit about the measures that Hong Kong has taken to be friendly for fintech entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think very first thing is we have to sort of change our mindset a little bit. The old way of acting as a central banker or a regulator, for information, the HKMA does both. We're de facto central bank and as well as the bank supervisor, and also the payment service provider supervisor. So, but the world has changed so rapidly. Since the introduction of smartphone, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, people's expectation of service has changed dramatically. They are looking at not just, in the old days, we call it UI, right? User interface, but now it's user experience, UX, right? So they want to see a bank app or a payment app to be easy to use, fast, and they don't want to click even one more button to finish a transaction. But you, at the same time, as a regulator, you want all this to be very secure, right? So you need to ensure that the service provider has a very robust cybersecurity framework, cyber resilience framework to protect the customers, and at the same time deliver the good user experience to their customers. That is the hard part. So we have to be a little bit more flexible, and we have to work as agile as our regulatees, right? Like some of the fintech startups. So we have to use other approaches. We cannot just wait for them to submit their final proposal before we, look into it. We need to use, adopt a more sandbox approaches. And that's what we did since 2016.
Indeed. And Hong Kong is a very friendly place for fintech entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering, as the march of digital payments progresses, what happens to cash, Nelson? Because obviously not everyone can transact digitally. So how do we solve this issue where cash usage becomes less and less, but there's still a population that really needs to operate in cash? We're seeing in some countries merchants who don't accept cash anymore, and of course that will exclude people who can't use digital. So what's your take on the future of cash?
Yeah, I think we hear a lot about cashless society, but I think we are pro-choice, and that's why we want to give the people the option.
Yes.
If for some of the people they see cash as a much better tool for them, we should allow them to use cash. And luckily enough, in Hong Kong, we see people use different things. I talk about the percentage about digital payment, but
Yes.
there are still some segments that they still prefer cash, and
Mm.
so that's okay. And for us, luckily enough, we are only a small city, so cash management for the banks are pretty much very more effective or more efficient than some of the countries with a geographical spread. And
That's a
so I
very
think
good
that's
point.
the advantage of being a small city. And so our stance is we want to give people choices, and
Mm.
so that's why I think that is the stance that we communicated with you 4 years ago. That's our
Yes.
stance, and that still holds.
And Nelson, that's a fantastic overview of the payments landscape in Hong Kong and the transformations that you're making to some of the rails, but also an insight into the work you're doing to stimulate the fintech industry. I just want to ask you finally, this COVID thing is obviously impacting all of us and changing our society, changing the way we live. We just talked before about our children and how their education is changing. So, what are your reflections on society as we hopefully soon exit this pandemic?
Mm.
What do you hope will change for the better as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think we have to admit that we are still in a challenging time. Uh, in Chinese, the term crisis is actually very interesting. In Chinese, the first word is crisis, but it follows by another word, another character called opportunity.
Yes.
So in the that's maybe the old ancient wisdom. When there is a crisis, there will be opportunities.
Mm.
And when we look at the data that we accumulated since February, we see increasing use of digital means of doing finance by the people of Hong Kong. So I believe, and also there has been surveys conducted by other parties. I can name one. The CPA Australia have done a regional survey, and even on the business side, they are increasingly willing to use fintech solutions.
Yes.
So that is actually a good news. Um, in the old days, past couple of years, we have to fight very hard to ensure that is a good adoption and a
Yeah.
good critical mass. But looks like this crisis has created this opportunity to propel some of the digital transformation for banks, and also the user of bank services, like the consumers, and also the cops. So I
Absolutely.
think it's so you can see it both ways,
Yes.
and in the post crisis, I'm not sure because we are still in the midst of the crisis. In the post crisis world, not just we anticipate there will be higher use adoption of digital finance. We believe there will be higher demand of fintech solutions from all around the world. So it may create good opportunities for the fintech startups. So we always welcome those startups from the UK to come over, and it may be a good chance for them to sell their services. When I talk to some startups, some encounter some difficulties during this crisis, but some told us that they have increasing a number of requests and businesses. And so it depends on what you do. Like the tool that we're using right now, you see their stock price has gone up, couple fold. Yeah.
Indeed. Hey, Nelson, I think one lesson from the crisis is this, which is we really see the foundational nature of the central bank and the security and the certainty that comes from the actions of the central bank in crises like these. And also I have to congratulate HKMA on the very forward-looking approach it takes to upgrading the payment rails, but also to stimulating the fintech environment. So it's been an absolute pleasure to hear your views today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.